currencies, which would reduce their dependency on the US dollar. The Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, or COMSA, has launched a digital payment system. It would allow the 21 member nations of the regional economic bloc to settle cross-border payments in local currencies, eliminating the need to convert them into hard currencies like the American dollar for international trade.
The world is changing, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. For decades, the U.S. dollar ruled everything: oil, trade, and global finance. But now, something historic is happening. Africa, the continent once controlled by Western economies, is rising, united, and powerful. And what's happening right now has the potential to change the entire global order. In boardrooms across Washington, London, and Brussels, alarm bells are ringing. Because for the first time, African nations are rejecting the dollar and building something new, something that could shake the foundations of Western dominance. From Lagos to Johannesburg, Addis Ababa to Nairobi, African finance ministers are quietly signing deals to trade in local currencies, backed by gold, minerals, and regional strength. The new financial systems, AfCFTA, PAPSS, and BRICS Plus, are not just ideas. They're real, and they are rewriting the rules of money itself. Imagine this: African countries trading billions without touching a single US dollar. African gold, oil, and rare earth minerals priced in African currencies. And the world's biggest powers, from the U.S. to the EU, scrambling to understand how they lost control. This isn't fiction. It's happening now. And it's why global headlines are filled with one phrase that the West fears most: de-dollarization. When the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, first discussed a new reserve currency, few took it seriously. But today, the momentum has shifted. Over 40 nations, including Nigeria, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Kenya, are lining up to join. And behind closed doors, Africa is being positioned as the engine of this new world economy. Why? Because Africa holds the raw materials the modern world runs on: cobalt for batteries, gold for reserves, lithium for tech, and oil for energy. Every resource the world needs for the next century lies beneath African soil. And this time, Africa isn't selling cheap. The message from African leaders is clear: no more being used. No more unfair deals. No more dependency. A new era has begun, one built on African unity, resource control, and economic sovereignty. And what's terrifying for the West is that it's working. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you'll see how Africa's quiet financial revolution has the power to end dollar dominance, reshape trade, and create a world where Africa sets the terms. This is the story the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. This is how Africa replaced the dollar, and why the world may never be the same again. For nearly 80 years, the U.S. dollar has been the foundation of the global economy. It was the world's reserve currency, used in over 85% of all international trade. From oil in Saudi Arabia to cobalt in Congo, every transaction began and ended with the dollar. But that system wasn't built on fairness. It was built on control. When countries traded in dollars, they had to rely on U.S. banks, U.S. interest rates, and U.S. policies. It gave Washington an invisible hand in nearly every economy. African nations suffered most. Their currencies lost value. What if we built a system where we control our own money? The answer came through BRICS, a group of nations tired of Western financial dominance. Led by China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, the alliance proposed a new path: trading through local currencies and building a shared financial network independent of the dollar. And Africa, rich, ambitious, and ready, became the heart of that plan. From Nigeria's new Naira-based oil contracts to Kenya's gold-backed trade systems and Ghana's lithium exports, the change is already visible. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS, launched under AfCFTA, now allows African countries to trade directly without converting to U.S. dollars. At the 2024 BRICS summit in Johannesburg, something historic happened. African nations didn't just attend as observers, they arrived as future power players. Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Egypt formally applied to join BRICS Plus, bringing Africa closer to the core of a new economic order. The BRICS alliance had long discussed de-dollarization, but without Africa, it was incomplete. Because Africa holds the world's most strategic resources, the raw materials that define the future: cobalt for batteries, lithium for electric cars, gold for financial security, oil for energy, and rare earth metals for global technology. Together, these are worth over $10 trillion in untapped value. The U.S. and EU know this. It's why they've fought so hard to maintain influence in Africa. But BRICS saw something the West didn't: a future where Africa is not exploited, but empowered. China invested heavily in African infrastructure. India built digital partnerships. Russia signed defense and energy pacts. And Brazil offered agricultural technology. It wasn't aid, it was alliance. Mutual benefit, not dependency. And now, with the rise of the BRICS payment network, and talk of a gold-backed digital currency, Africa's minerals have a new purpose: to back real value, not speculative dollars. Countries like Ghana and Zimbabwe have already begun pegging their currencies to gold. South Africa is working on blockchain trade platforms that bypass the SWIFT system entirely. Nigeria and Kenya are developing systems that connect their central banks directly to the BRICS interbank network. This is Africa's golden ticket, not given, but earned. By aligning with BRICS, Africa is transforming from a supplier of raw materials into a shareholder of global wealth. Western corporations are panicking. Tech companies in the U.S. depend on African cobalt and rare earths. Energy companies depend on African oil and gas. And now, African nations are saying, you can still buy, but not in dollars. Imagine paying for cobalt in Naira, or for oil in Rand, or for gold in Bear. That's the future BRICS is building. And it terrifies Washington and Brussels because it means the dollar no longer controls the gateway to the world's resources. For the first time in modern history, Africa has the leverage, and it's using it wisely. As BRICS expands, a new global order is forming, and Africa is right at the center. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, connects 54 nations into one massive economic bloc: 1.5 billion people, $3.4 trillion in GDP. If Africa were one country, it would already be the fifth largest economy in the world. Now, combine that with the BRICS network, and Africa's position becomes unstoppable. Across the continent, new financial frameworks are rising. A Pan-African central bank being discussed in Addis Ababa. A digital currency initiative connecting major economies like Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. Local stock exchanges merging to create continental financial power. This isn't just theory, it's reality. In 2025, trade between African countries hit record highs, driven by PAPSS, which allows settlements in local currencies instantly. Meanwhile, the U.S. dollar's share in African trade has fallen below 50% for the first time in history. The global consequences are enormous. If Africa and BRICS nations continue this trajectory, they could collectively control more than half of the world's trade in under 2 decades. The West knows this. That's why leaders from Washington, London, and Paris are suddenly re-engaging Africa. But this time, Africa isn't negotiating from weakness. As Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré said recently, Africa has nothing to lose but its chains, and everything to gain by uniting. That quote now defines an era. African youth are inspired. African economies are diversifying, and African currencies are gaining strength. The message is clear. Africa no longer needs to follow, it's leading. The shift has already begun. Every deal in local currency. Every mine nationalized for fair trade. Every new alliance signed under BRICS Plus. It's all part of a silent revolution. For centuries, Africa's story was written by others. But now, Africa is holding the pen. The US dollar will not disappear overnight. But its dominance is cracking, not because of war, but because of wisdom. Because Africa has chosen to rise on its own terms. The West may see this as a threat, but in truth, it's balance. A global economy that works for everyone, not just a few. From the dusty gold fields of Mali to the cobalt mines of Congo. From the tech corridors of Nairobi to the oil hubs of Lagos, a new rhythm is echoing across the continent. It says, Africa is awake. It says, we are ready. It says, the future is ours. And as the world watches, one truth becomes clear. This is not just Africa replacing the dollar. This is Africa reclaiming its destiny.
Welcome to African Spotlight 24, your premier source for news and current affairs from across the continent. We're glad you're here. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and turn on notification to stay up to date with the latest news and analysis. Your support helps us reach more people. Disclaimer: the content of this video is based on credible, publicly available information and is intended for educational, analytical, and informational purposes only. African Spotlight 24 does not promote hate, violence, misinformation, or political unrest. Our goal is to deliver thoughtful insights, highlight local voices, and encourage informed conversations throughout Africa.